Hi and welcome back. This week's videos are going to concentrate on preparation for our Halloween party on Saturday and the costumes that we're getting ready. But first of all, I'm making a costume, a Snow Queen costume for my granddaughter who is 6, and she has given me very strict instructions. So I had a costume that fit her exactly, which was her original costume. And the material that I had was an icy blue with some tulle and some striped silver. So what I did was I measured the skirt of the witch's costume and cut it to length, and then 4 times the waist measurement. I then pinned it together and stitched that so I had a big tube. Now, I didn't have a pattern, so what I did was I used the original witch's costume as my pattern, which is, I guess it would have been easier just to go out and buy a pattern for her, but this is the way I've always done it. So literally I just trace it off, place the bodice and the arms and everything onto the material and just trace around it and then cut it out. So that's what I did first of all with the bodice. I took roughly the shape of the bodice, the initial bodice that I had, cut it out, pinned it and sewed it. These sleeves came off another top that was an old top, and I thought it looked like icicles or ice, maybe on glass. Here's the undersleeve. So what I did was I cut out sleeves from another top and fit them into the armholes, and then underneath, from the same material as the dress, I cut little sleeves to fit and then put them underneath. I then, where the neck and the back, that's the back where the join is, I sort of lined it with the same material and then flipped it over, cut it to the same shape, sewed it and then flipped it over so that it was like you can see it's self-lined. So it's just in parts, and it's just so that it's a nicer finish on the neckline. And as you can see, it's inside, it's a bit of a mess. I just tack it down. It's probably just for dress up and for one night of Halloween. So once it's pinned like that, what I'll do is I'll go over it with a top stitch usually. This time I went with an embroidery stitch, just like I said, just to finish it off and make it a little bit prettier. And that's where the join will be for the clasp. So you can see when it's all joined together, that is the top stitch, which was an embroidery stitch off my sewing machine. The sleeves, the oversleeve, I tacked to the undersleeve, just so that it looked more gathered and fuller, because that's the look that she wanted. I also made a cloak from the same fabric. I just cut it the same width and length as the skirt, and just made it into one big long piece. I did actually join it together in the middle with a French seam, which is a hidden seam. So you put the right sides together and then you sew down that seam, and then you fold it back on itself and sew it again so that the seam is hidden when you turn the garment inside out. From the front it looks the same. It's just, if you don't have a lining for something, it just covers the seam and makes it look better. There usually is a little bit of, this is what I'm doing now, when you turn the seam on itself, there's little bits of fabric that may come through. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just trimming the fabric off. Actually, I think I said you put the right sides together. You actually put the wrong sides facing each other, which is not the normal way to sew. You sew a seam and then you put the right sides together, and that's when you get the hidden seam. So sorry about that, it was incorrect. Once I had the seam round the back, I then did the same embroidery over stitch all the way around the garment, and on the top I made a slight collar by making a tube almost. So I folded the fabric on top of itself, ran an embroidery stitch with a little channel to put a ribbon in. This embroidery stitch is very pretty. It just adds an extra element to the garment. It's a little bit time consuming, but it does look nice once it's finished, especially when it's all the way round. I also made a belt. I made a tube of the same material. I measured it to just a little bit larger than her natural waist. Stuck some Velcro to both sides, obviously matching, and then ran the same embroidery stitch along both sides of the belt to make it match the rest of the outfit. On the belt, you can see I added a felt snowflake which came out of my Christmas decor box. It was like a garland, so I took it all apart, sewed a few to the neckline, added one to the waistband, and then took some fabric glue and stuck the rest intermittently around the skirt. I did add some embellishments on some of the front facing snowflakes, but I left the back, just the felt, obviously for sitting, so she won't have any problems. I added the embroidery stitch to as many of the finishes as I could, so the hem, the waistband, the neckline, the cloak, just to match it. It does finish it nicely, and it does make it all very coherent. The cloak was, I'm going to try and find the felt snowflakes to add to the cloak. I ran out, so as long as the dress was finished, I figured the cloak was a bit of an afterthought. The neck of the cloak was just gathered with a piece of white grosgrain ribbon. I put a stitch on either side so it would stay gathered, and that fits roughly around her neck. And then obviously she has the crown, which was 2 pieces of card cut into shape, stuck together and then wrapped in the artificial snow. It's like comes in a sheet. So I went to the dollar store and got the icicles and the little beads that go in for filler for flowers, stuck them on with the hot glue, and then filled in with the beads, and sprayed glitter on top of it all, and then covered it in Mod Podge so it's all solid. So the finished costume is the dress and the cloak with the crown. She has the embellished snowflakes just obviously on the front of the dress. I'm going to get some more and add them to the cloak. The sleeves obviously were added above and beyond to add that little bit of flounciness. She wanted really big puffy sleeves, and the length is perfect. She's not dragging on the floor, so it just shows you don't need a pattern. It's kind of thrown together. I did it in a day. It's not perfect, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it's good enough for dress up and for Halloween. And like I said, the inside is not finished. If this was a full-time dress, I would have followed the pattern, lined it, finished off my seams properly, but just for Halloween, I think it's turned out really well. So in preparation for our party on Saturday, I have 2 more costumes to make and a couple to help with. So those will come up on Tuesday's video, so stay tuned for that.